Imagine being ridiculed in public by the very person who once promised to love you forever. Olivia thought she was living a fairy tale until she discovered that her Prince Charming was in truth a man obsessed with power and appearances. Humiliated in front of everyone, called a shame for gaining weight, she left home with only 3 suitcases and a silent promise, never to return. What seemed like the end became an astonishing new beginning, and destiny's revenge was sweeter than anyone could have predicted. If you've ever faced moments where people doubted you, this story will strike deep in your heart. Here on this channel, you'll discover how to turn pain into strength and how to rise again when everything seems lost. So don't wait. Subscribe now and turn on notifications to follow every detail of this inspiring journey. Because who knows, maybe your next great comeback is about to begin. Olivia Parker traveled from Dallas to Las Vegas for a hospitality convention. As a dedicated manager of a respected hotel chain, she was used to the routine of spreadsheets, meetings, and quick decisions. But in that vibrant city, surrounded by dazzling lights and an almost electric energy, she felt that something different was about to happen. Little did she know that this encounter would completely change the course of her life. Richard Thompson appeared as a presence impossible to ignore. A billionaire in the real estate sector, he carried not only wealth but also a magnetic confidence that drew attention wherever he went. Elegant and charismatic, he had the ability to turn a simple conversation into an unforgettable moment. When Richard and Olivia's paths crossed, it seemed inevitable that something greater would arise from it. Their first conversations were light, filled with laughter, exchanged stories, and lingering glances. Time seemed to flow differently when they were together. What began as casual dialogue at a business convention quickly transformed into an intense connection, as if they had known each other in another life. The chemistry was undeniable, and neither of them tried to resist it. Within days, they were living experiences that felt straight out of a movie. Sophisticated dinners at fine restaurants, rides in luxury cars, and nights illuminated by the dazzling backdrop of Las Vegas. Olivia, who had always kept her feet firmly on the ground, allowed herself to be carried away by the enchantment of the moment. It was as if the whole world had suddenly been painted in brighter colors. Richard showed, with every gesture, just how well he knew how to win someone over. Expensive gifts, unexpected invitations to quick getaways, and a kind of attention that made Olivia feel like the center of his universe. She, used to the discipline of work, surrendered more and more to that new rhythm. The promises came early. Richard spoke of the future as if describing a guaranteed paradise. Trips around the world, a life free of worries, moments of pure pleasure and happiness. Olivia listened, enchanted, believing she had found something rare, something few are lucky enough to experience. With every word, she felt as though this was the beginning of a new story. Days turned into weeks, and the intensity never lessened. On the contrary, it seemed to grow with each encounter. Richard knew how to impress, and Olivia, without realizing it, was already entangled in a web of feelings, expectations, and dreams that went far beyond any convention in Las Vegas. Her heart now beat to a different rhythm, faster, almost uncontrollable. And so, what had begun as a simple work trip became the starting point of an unexpected journey. The bright lights of Las Vegas no longer marked only a professional commitment, but the beginning of a relationship that promised intensity, luxury, and a grand future. What Olivia did not know was that behind all that enchantment, a path full of challenges was about to unfold. The marriage proposal came faster than Olivia Parker could have ever imagined. Richard Thompson, a charming, muscular black man of 34, seemed in a hurry to turn that overwhelming passion into a lifelong commitment. In just 6 months, against a luxurious and glowing backdrop, he knelt down and presented her with a dazzling ring. Olivia, a beautiful black woman of 28, tall, with curly hair and an emotional smile, said, "Yes," believing this was the beginning of the fairy tale she had always dreamed of living. Right after the engagement, Olivia made a decision that would change her life entirely. She left her stable career in Dallas, where she was a hotel chain manager, and followed Richard to New York, the city where he had built his empire. It was like diving headfirst into a whole new world. Towering skyscrapers, bustling streets, and a lifestyle far removed from her previous routine. She surrendered herself, believing that love justified every sacrifice. The wedding was worthy of the pages of a luxury magazine, A mansion decorated with rare flowers, distinguished guests, and flashes coming from every direction. Olivia, stunning in her white gown, looked like a queen, while Richard displayed the stature of a man at the peak of success. The ceremony was talked about in New York's social circles, marked as one of the most glamorous events of the year. To everyone, they were the perfect couple. In the first 6 months of marriage, everything seemed like a dream. Olivia lived surrounded by luxury, traveling to Europe in private jets, staying in palaces turned into hotels, and attending high society parties. Richard made a point of showing off the wife he had chosen, and Olivia, with her natural beauty and graceful demeanor, fit perfectly into that setting. But the fascination wasn't only in the trips or the parties. For Olivia, there was a sense of completeness, as if she had finally found her place in the world. Every gesture from Richard, every word spoken during candlelit dinners nurtured her certainty that she had made the right choice. Love seemed to be the foundation holding together every detail of that exuberant life. Friends and acquaintances admired the couple. Some even saw them as an inspiration, commenting on the harmony they displayed in public. Olivia received constant praise for her graceful posture, while Richard was always exalted for his generosity in sharing his fortune through grand gestures. Everything seemed too perfect, as if life itself had arranged every piece of the puzzle in its exact place. And in that setting, Olivia believed the future was secure. The home they shared was a sumptuous mansion in New York, equipped with everything one could wish for. From the windows, they could see the city that never sleeps, and each night seemed to close with a new promise of eternal happiness. It was the portrait of abundance wrapped in luxury and apparent harmony. What Olivia didn't realize was that behind all that perfection, something was hidden. Between smiles and promises, subtle shadows already existed, small cracks beginning to form. But at that moment, she didn't see them, or perhaps didn't want to. After all, who could imagine that after so much brightness, destiny was preparing such an unexpected turn? As the months went by, Olivia began to notice subtle changes in Richard. The intensity of their romance gave way to an unexpected coldness. The same man who had once won her over with grand gestures and promises of love now revealed an almost uncontrollable obsession with money and power. Richard, who once spoke of dreams they would share, began repeating that a Thompson's wife doesn't need to work. He made a point of showing society that he could provide Olivia with every luxury in the world, but in practice, he was cutting her off from the career she had once loved. Having left behind a prominent position in Dallas, Olivia now felt increasingly trapped in the mansion in New York, as if she were nothing more than a trophy on display. While Richard buried himself in endless meetings, business trips, and corporate dinners, Olivia endured long days in silence. The grandeur of the mansion clashed with the loneliness that consumed her. Spacious halls, flawless gardens, and endless corridors served only as the backdrop for his absence. The luxury that once enchanted her now felt like a gilded prison. Day by day, Olivia saw more of the true nature of the man she had married. Richard spoke of numbers, contracts, and investments as if they were the only things that mattered. She, with her gaze growing more distant, longed only for the simplicity of a sincere embrace. But that gesture no longer came from him. At times, Olivia tried to distract herself with small details, reading old books from the library, walking through the garden, or observing the city from the balcony. Yet even in those moments, the emptiness remained. The life that looked perfect from the outside concealed a bitter truth. The love that had once made her shine was now being suffocated by Richard's ego and vanity. He did not want a partner. He wanted an image to display. Olivia realized she was being reduced to a social symbol, someone to complete the picture of perfection Richard wished to show in public. His power was like a constant shadow, suppressing her will and silencing her voice. The contrast between the man Richard had seemed to be in the beginning and the man he revealed himself to be now left Olivia confused and wounded. She remembered the smiles in Las Vegas, the promises of a bright future, and wondered at what moment it had all been lost. It was like watching a castle crumble, stone by stone, without being able to stop it. And so, even surrounded by wealth and abundance, Olivia began to feel an emptiness that nothing could fill. The dark side of Richard revealed itself more and more, preparing the ground for even deeper pains that were about to unfold. One day, while tidying forgotten drawers in the mansion's office, Olivia found traces of something that should not have existed. Messages exchanged on a phone left on the desk revealed a recurring name: Vanessa Miller. Until then, she had been just another face in the same social events, but now she emerged as the shadow staining Olivia's trust in Richard. The discovery fell on Olivia like an unbearable weight. Richard's long absences, once justified by business, now took on a new meaning. Every sudden trip, every late-night meeting hid encounters with Vanessa. The pain of betrayal consumed her from within, and for the first time, Olivia felt that the luxurious life she lived was nothing more than a facade to deceive herself. The shock was so great that she began to seek refuge wherever she could. Food, once merely part of her routine, became her escape from anxiety and loneliness. In just a few months, Olivia gained weight, the physical reflection of an emotional pain that silently grew inside her. It was as if every calorie consumed was a muffled scream of anguish. Instead of offering support, Richard turned the situation into a source of humiliation. He began to criticize her in public, letting cruel comments slip during parties and social gatherings. He called Olivia a shame at his side, as if her body were a burden to his perfect image. More than wounding her, it made her feel invisible. Friends who once praised her now averted their eyes during scenes of contempt. Olivia, increasingly withdrawn, no longer recognized herself in the mirror. Her former glow disappeared beneath layers of hurt, and Richard seemed to feed on it, reaffirming his power with each cutting word. The name Vanessa, meanwhile, surfaced more and more in social conversations. Young and ambitious, she seemed to occupy the place that once belonged to Olivia, not only in Richard's heart but also on the stage of high society. The contrast between the two women was used as cruel ammunition to emphasize their differences. Even in the face of humiliation, Olivia tried to keep silent. She didn't want her pain to become an even greater spectacle, yet inside her, something was beginning to change. A mixture of sorrow and revolt was forming, though she did not yet know how to act. The betrayal was no longer just an intimate wound. It had become public, and that forced exposure would be the spark for the most difficult and most liberating decision Olivia would ever make in her life. The night seemed like so many others, filled with distinguished guests, soft music, and champagne glasses glimmering under the mansion's chandeliers. Olivia, now obese with 30 extra kilos, walked with discreet steps, trying to blend into the crowd. Yet nothing could prepare her for the blow Richard was about to deliver. In front of everyone, Richard appeared arm in arm with Vanessa Miller, the ambitious young woman who no longer cared to hide. The scene froze Olivia for a few seconds. As the guest's eyes turned toward the couple, her heart tightened, as if caught in an impossible knot. Amid the party, Richard raised his voice, not only so Olivia could hear, but so that everyone present would notice. He declared that he no longer loved her, that she remained only because he supported all that fat. The silence that followed was suffocating. The humiliation, cruel and calculated, echoed louder than any music. The guests, uncomfortable, turned their eyes away, pretending not to hear, but the scene was already etched on every face. Olivia, in silence, felt each word as an open wound. There was no argument, no tears there, only a dull, deep pain that accompanied her up the stairs of the mansion. In the bedroom, without looking back, Olivia opened the wardrobe and packed 3 suitcases. Each folded garment was a symbol of detachment, a silent farewell to the past that no longer belonged to her. The elegant dress she wore that night now felt like a burden, a cruel reminder of her public shame. When the party ended, Olivia came down with the suitcases, passed through the hall, and left unnoticed. Outside, she called a cab. As she stepped inside, she glanced one last time at the mansion she had once believed was the home of her dreams. Now it was nothing more than a prison she swore never to inhabit again. In the silence of the cab, the tears finally fell. But there was not only sadness, there was also a promise. Olivia swore to herself that she would never return to that house, nor to the man who had reduced her to dust in front of everyone. The wound was deep, but amid the pain, a new desire was born, to start over. And it was at that very moment, with a broken heart and her life packed in suitcases, that Olivia began a journey that would change everything. She did not yet know how or when, but inside her grew a flame of resilience that would soon transform her pain into strength. In the days following her departure from the mansion, Olivia wandered through the city in search of an opportunity. Resume handed in at hotels, interviews at offices, and doors that closed before her story could even be heard. With every no, the weight of rejection seemed to add itself to her recent pain. Even so, there was a quiet determination within her. She would not return to Dallas defeated. After so many refusals, Olivia decided to change her strategy. Instead of insisting on the position she had once held, she accepted the idea of looking for simpler paths. That was how she found a job at a small neighborhood cafe in Brooklyn, Lee's Coffee House. The modest and cozy space was far from the luxury she had left behind, but it carried a sincere, almost familiar energy. The owner, Mrs. Lee, was a 50-year-old Chinese woman, marked by the wisdom of experience and the strength of someone who had fought hard to keep her business alive. From the very first day, Olivia sensed something different in their relationship. There were no masks, no battles for status, only honest work and the desire to serve well. With the job came the need to reorganize her life. Olivia rented a small studio apartment in Brooklyn, simple and barely big enough for the essentials. The bare walls and narrow bed symbolized the beginning of a new cycle. Far from the high society parties, she was rediscovering life in its most authentic form. It was during this period that Olivia took a step that would change both her body and her mind. She signed up at a neighborhood gym. At first, every exercise felt like a battle against herself, but little by little, working out stopped being just an effort and became an outlet. With each session, she regained not only energy but also her self-esteem. Her change in habits extended into her daily routine. Olivia began cooking her own meals, choosing simple, nutritious foods. She discovered the pleasure of preparing healthy dishes and even experimenting with new recipes. The act of caring for her own nutrition became a gesture of kindness toward herself, something she had lost in the whirlwind of her former life. At the cafe, Olivia found new meaning for her skills. Serving customers, preparing coffee, and organizing small details were modest tasks, yet they brought her genuine satisfaction. Slowly, she began to see each smile from a satisfied customer as a personal victory, proof that she still had much to offer. Between the cups of coffee, her workouts, and the silence of her studio apartment, Olivia was reconnecting with something she believed she had lost, her own strength. The luxury and glamour of the past no longer mattered. In their place was a more real, more conscious, and more determined version of herself. And without realizing it, she was already laying the groundwork for something far greater yet to come. One morning, while arranging the tables at Lee's Coffee House, Olivia was surprised by Richard's arrival. At his side, Vanessa Miller wore a provocative smile. Their visit had no other purpose than to mock her. Richard ordered a coffee and, with loud sarcasm, remarked how far Olivia had fallen in status. Pain tightened in her chest, but she stood firm even though inside she wished she could disappear. At that moment, Mrs. Lee stepped in. With a steady gaze and sharp voice, the cafe's owner confronted Richard in front of all the customers. "If you came here to humiliate my employee, you are forbidden to enter this place." Silence filled the room. For the first time in a long while, someone had stood up for Olivia, and it felt like a bolt of courage piercing through her insecurities. That unexpected defense became a turning point. Olivia realized she was no longer alone, that there were people willing to see her beyond the labels. That gesture, simple yet powerful, reignited the confidence that had long been dormant. The small, modest cafe now became the place where she would rediscover her own strength. Determined to repay the generosity she had received, Olivia began using her experience as a hotel manager to help the business. She organized spreadsheets, reviewed expenses, and proposed innovative ideas. Little by little, Lee's Coffee House began to transform. What once seemed like a shop on the brink of closing was now gaining new life through creative strategies. One of the first changes was the creation of a refreshed menu. Olivia added seasonal options, specialty coffees, and homemade desserts. Soon, customers began to notice the difference and recommend the place. The cafe grew busier, and even people from other neighborhoods started frequenting it, drawn by the novelty. Beyond the menu, Olivia suggested loyalty campaigns. Customer cards, tasting events, and even cultural nights with live music became reality. The cafe, which had once struggled to survive, now had lines at the door. Mrs. Lee moved, watched her business bloom like never before. With success came the hiring of new staff, and the atmosphere of the cafe changed completely. Olivia, who had once been humiliated in public, was now recognized for her own ideas. Among sacks of ground coffee and crowded tables, she rediscovered the joy of leading and of making a difference. With each victory, no matter how small, Olivia regained a piece of herself. The woman who had once left the mansion in tears was now building a solid path, made of work and dignity. And without realizing it, she was opening the doors to something even greater, something that would change not only her life but also the lives of those who believed in her. Months of success went by quickly, and Lee's coffee house was no longer the same. The space that had once stood nearly empty now overflowed with energy and excitement. Olivia, still obese with 20 extra kilos but more confident and full of determination, felt proud to see the results of her effort reflected in every satisfied customer. Mrs. Lee, deeply moved, watched every achievement closely, recognizing how much Olivia had transformed the business. One quiet afternoon, Mrs. Lee invited Olivia into the small back office for a private talk. Surrounded by papers and accounting books, she revealed what she had long kept in her heart. "My dear, we've only gotten this far because of you. I want to propose a partnership. I know that together we can fly even higher." The words echoed like music to Olivia, who had never imagined receiving such recognition. The proposal wasn't just about business, it was about trust and partnership. Olivia, once discarded and humiliated, was now being asked to share not only responsibilities but also dreams. Mrs. Lee's sincere gaze conveyed something rare, the certainty that this new chapter would be built on mutual respect and shared purpose. Without hesitation, Olivia accepted. A surge of energy ran through her, reigniting the spirit of leadership that had once lain dormant. Immediately, ideas began to flow, expanding the menu, standardizing processes, developing local marketing, and organizing events to connect the community even more deeply with the cafe. What had once been simple was now becoming grand. With these new strategies, results came quickly. The small cafe moved into a larger space, with modern and welcoming decor. With every grand opening of a new branch, the Lee and Parker coffee brand grew stronger, becoming known not only for the quality of its products but also for the inspiring story it carried. Growth brought new challenges: staff training, inventory management, relationships with suppliers. But Olivia was not intimidated. On the contrary, she saw in each obstacle an opportunity to prove, to herself and to the world, that she could transform pain into purpose. What had once been a source of humiliation now became fuel for victory. In little time, there were 8 stores across New York, each carrying the Lee and Parker coffee name as a symbol of resilience and courage. Loyal customers multiplied, and the EA brand was recognized in the city's busiest neighborhoods. Olivia, who had once served coffee from behind the counter, was now co-founder of an expanding empire. And so, what had once seemed like just a humble restart transformed into something much greater. Olivia was not only rebuilding her own life, but also writing a new story that inspired everyone around her, and without realizing it, she was drawing closer to an even more defining moment: the public recognition of everything she had achieved. Time passed, and Olivia's transformation became visible not only in the success of Lee and Parker Coffee, but also in her own life. Now 30 kilos lighter, more confident, and glowing with renewed energy, she had become a symbol of resilience and triumph. Her posture radiated strength, and her smile reflected the peace of someone who had found a true purpose. It didn't take long for recognition to arrive. Olivia and Mrs. Lee were invited to receive an entrepreneurship award at one of Manhattan's most prestigious high society events. For many, it was surprising to see these two women, from such different backgrounds, now sharing the stage as symbols of innovation and courage. On the night of the award ceremony, Olivia entered the Grand Hall accompanied by Daniel Foster, a successful and elegant lawyer. Daniel's gaze toward her was not one of vanity, but of genuine admiration. For the first time in years, Olivia felt, seen not for her appearance or status, but for the value she carried within herself. Guests whispered, impressed by the meteoric rise of Lee and Parker Coffee. Many remembered Olivia as the wife of the magnate, but few could have imagined the strength she would demonstrate after breaking away from that past. Her presence at the ESI event was living proof that dignity and courage could change destinies. The opening speeches were filled with emotion. Mrs. Lee highlighted the importance of perseverance and the need to believe in the right people. Olivia spoke about how failure, pain, and humiliation can become fuel for building something extraordinary. Her words touched the audience, earning a standing ovation. As she walked through the hall, Olivia noticed how every look toward her had changed. There was no more pity, no judgment, only respect. The same environment that had once been the stage for her pain was now the setting of her victory. It was as if destiny had chosen that moment to show that no fall is ever final. Daniel, by her side, reinforced with his presence the new chapter in her life. A relationship built on support, admiration, and equality. Unlike what she had experienced, with Richard, Olivia now knew a love that didn't diminish her but strengthened her. The event was not only a professional celebration, it was the public recognition of a woman who, even after losing everything, had rebuilt her life with dignity and determination. Yet, among the applause and praise, the most unexpected encounter of the night was still to come. At that very event in Manhattan, while Olivia received congratulations and posed for photos beside Daniel Foster, the unexpected happened. Her eyes met Richard's. He was no longer the proud, imposing man he once had been. His suit looked worn, his expression weighed down by worry, and the brilliance of the past had disappeared from his eyes. Destiny, ironic as only it can be, had collected its price. After marrying Vanessa Miller, Richard watched the empire he had built collapse. Vanessa, ambitious and calculating, embezzled money from the company and, to make matters worse, betrayed him with his best friend. The scandal spread quickly through social circles, permanently staining the magnate's image. The divorce left him ruined. The fortune, once a symbol of power, was nearly all lost. Friends drifted away, investors abandoned him, and in little time Richard went from an example of success to the butt of jokes among those who had once revered him. Now standing before Olivia, his downfall was painfully clear. She, on the other hand, was the complete opposite. Radiant, confident, 30 kilos lighter, and with a brilliant career, Olivia walked with firm steps, sustained not only by her professional success but also by the dignity she had reclaimed. At Daniel's side, she received the applause that had once belonged to Richard. When he tried to approach, Olivia only smiled from afar. There was no rancor in her eyes, only the serenity of someone who had learned that vengeance is not about destroying another but about showing, through one's own life, that pain has been transformed into strength. Holding Daniel's hand, she continued toward the stage. In her speech, Olivia spoke firmly. "One day everything was taken from me, my self-esteem, my dignity, even my voice. Today I know that none of this can be stolen when we believe in ourselves. True success is born from resilience." Her words echoed through the hall, met with thunderous applause. Richard remained silent, standing among the guests. The weight of his wrong choices crushed him, and the contrast between who he had become and who Olivia was now could not have been harsher. With every round of applause, he realized that what he had lost was not just a wife but a woman who had discovered her true greatness. In that instant, it became clear. Life had given its answer. Olivia hadn't needed to raise her voice or seek direct revenge. Her victory was, in itself, the final verdict. And Richard, alone amid the crowd, realized far too late the value of what he had once scorned. Olivia's journey is one of those stories that gives you chills. A woman who was ridiculed, betrayed, and knocked down, but who chose to rise and prove to everyone and above all to herself that no one can steal her strength. Picture the scene. The same woman who was once mocked is now receiving a standing ovation, while the man who humiliated her can barely hold her gaze. It's not just justice. It's destiny showing that life always rewards those who have the courage to start over. And tell me, aren't you just one step away from living your own Olivia moment? If this story moved you, it's because there's something inside you calling for change, for a turning point. So don't waste time. Subscribe to the channel now and turn on notifications. Here you'll find real stories, powerful reflections, and practical lessons that might be the spark you need to flip the switch in your life. Who knows? Maybe your next big leap begins right here, with you.